Okay, I think I did it. So hey everyone, my name is Alicia. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this workshop. I hope we're able to give you some foundational knowledge when considering living off campus. And by the way, just another reminder to please use that tiny URL to go ahead and sign in so you can get credit for being here. And I will attempt to drop that in the chat again. Let's see if that works. Just make sure you get signed in. And I'll go ahead and move on. Just a disclaimer. So I am going to be primarily focusing on different types of apartments in the Austin area, but we can also have an open discussion about houses, renting a room in a house, renting a house with a group of friends, talking about co-ops and other living situations as well. So yeah. So we got a lot of y'all on here, you know, compared to normal attendance. So I'm excited to talk to y'all. So I want to know a couple of things and feel free to respond, you know, however you want. But what part of Austin are you looking at? What are you looking for? And what are you feeling anxious about, if anything?
I guess I can go. I would like West Campus, like close to UT, like where I can still walk to classes. I feel like Chester West is a pretty good location overall. I kind of want to stay here, like in the area, and like I would like to have like my own bedroom and my own bathroom. And I guess I'm most yeah, because community bath is all right. I guess I'm most anxious about, I don't know, maybe like roommates if I were to get like 4x4, like 3x3, but like yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I definitely did community bath and I did the suite bath as well in the dorms. So it was a big upgrade when I got into an apartment. Anyone else? Tough crowd. All right, Andrea, what are your thoughts?
I wasn't gonna say anything because I already live in Austin.
Yeah, but you're thinking of moving, right?
Yeah, I personally I live Riverside, but two of my roommates are like, we want to live in West Campus. So I'm like, I will live in West Campus. I'm just looking for a 4x4. I want everyone to have their own rooms and their own bathrooms. I'm not down to clean someone else's bubble.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm not really anxious about anything because I know it's my best friend and this guy I know, so I'm not really like. I'm sure we'll get along. Everything will be fine.
Thank you. Ryan, I know you're not in the Austin area yet. Are you feeling anxious about anything? Oh, Ryan, is that your audio that's making a weird high-pitched sound? Oh, yeah, it was. Okay. Well, we can check back in on you. Oh, there he is.
Okay. Woo. That's better?
Yeah.
Okay. For the first question, what part would I like to live in? Well, preferably by campus somewhere, right? But I guess it doesn't really matter as long as it like fits the place because I know about the bus thing. That you can like take the buses for free or something like that, I heard. What are you looking for? I guess something cheap, right? Because that's also what I'm anxious about. The bills going from like $0 right now to like whatever thousands it's gonna be. But yeah, that's mine.
Trying to figure out the bus. Yeah, it's especially tough for people that don't have the best navigational skills. So yeah, gotten lost 3 times. It's helpful for me when I first moved to Austin, I put it on Google Maps and I would watch where we were going, and that kind of helped me understand like streets and like locations and where I was. But that's just me. All right, thanks y'all for those of y'all that were able to share, appreciate it. So just some things to keep in mind, you know, it was already mentioned about rent. Yeah, I feel you. That was definitely something that I had to think real hard about before considering moving to Austin, because Austin is so expensive. You also want to think about how many roommates do you want? Like how many personalities do you want to deal with, right? Where do you want to live in Austin? Many of you have talked about how important it is for you for proximity to campus, and that's important to know what you need and what your preferences are. And also to understand what are the basic housing needs that you need in order to be happy. So I wanted to start off on the front end with like the boring-ish numbers, but also super important numbers, right? So actually a lot of this information is in our budget workshop that we had before, and you can go to our Longhorn Link YouTube page and you can see that whole recording, or you can just get with me and Michelle and we can actually send you that budget PowerPoint. So this is just like a more lighter note of cost analysis. But you can see here, we kind of did a breakdown of averages between the dorms and the apartments. So over here in the dorms, average per year is a little over 15,000. It's going to be a little over 1,000 a month, okay? But if we're looking at the apartments, you'll see that this is a wide range, right? And don't get me wrong, depending on what dorm you're living in, whether that's going to be a luxury dorm or that's going to be, you know, one of the more essential dorms, you're going to be paying different prices, right? It's the same thing with apartments. If you're going to go to a lower end apartment versus a luxury apartment, like in West Campus, for instance, that's going to be a drastic price difference. And you can see that there, 7,000 a year versus 18,000 a year, right? Looking at 500, 600 a month versus 1,500 a month, right? So you could very well, depending on what apartment you put, end up paying more than you are in the dorm. So just be conscious of that. Also, as y'all know, in the dorms, it's typically for 9 months for the academic year. But when you're going to an apartment, that's more average to have a 12-month lease. And of course, I can also talk to y'all later on about subletting. For those of you that only want to be in your apartment like August through May, and then you want to go home for the summer, but you're stuck with a 12-month lease, we can also talk about subletting, where you can get someone in there to cover your rent, and that's not money out of your pocket. Something else to consider in the dorms, y'all are like really set up with like your internet, your cable, your meal plan, right? You got Bevo bucks. But when you're getting over to the apartment, that's really where you're trying to be more independent. You have to handle your own food and groceries and your basic necessities. Parking is also something to consider. Off to the left, I have some information on the different parking permits, and to the right, the only really parking fee you have to deal with is a covered parking spot if you want to pay extra. But keep in mind, if you're living further from campus and you have a vehicle, you do have to pay those parking permit fees off to the left. And living space. I think this is the most important thing. You're going from spending well over $1,000 a month for sharing half of a room in a dorm, and you're sharing a bathroom, and in one of your peers' case, a community bathroom, right? And then you're switching over to possibly having your own bedroom, your own bathroom, you're sharing a living room, and you have a kitchen, right? That's a lot more space. So we're gonna go ahead and move on. Do y'all have questions about these numbers so far? Feeling good? Right. So
it looks like some of y'all might be taking notes. We can always send this information out to you after with the sign in. So we've started doing that pretty consistently. So if you don't want to take notes, that way you can ask questions, feel free and we'll send it to you after.
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Something really important that I wanted to separate out for you guys is a college apartment versus a non-college apartment. Is there anybody in the call that has never heard of a college apartment before? Y'all are all good. You know the differences. All right. Yeah, so when I was in college, I didn't know that there was specific types of apartments. I thought it was just you just get an apartment, you know, and you go live with like families and kids and stuff, right? College apartments are like an off-campus extension of a dorm-like experience, but you don't have an RA, it's a totally different setup, right? And we actually have somebody on the call that is currently in a college apartment. So if they want to share their experiences, they can. And I have also lived in college apartments in other cities and in Austin. So some big things to consider. And I think this is one of the most important things, especially for those of y'all that are about to live on your own for the first time. And you might be living with people that you kind of know, maybe, you know, they're not family, right? But the biggest difference here is individual leases. So most oftentimes the college apartments are going to offer you an individual lease. And what that means is, let's say Ryan, Denise, and Andrea are going to move into a 3-bed, 3-bath. And Ryan can't make rent. Oh, Ryan, right? Denise and Andrea are able to make their rent. On an individual lease, Denise and Andrea won't be penalized for not making, for Ryan not making rent, because it's individual leases. So Ryan gets hit with a late fee, not y'all. If y'all are in a normal apartment or, you know, a non-college apartment or even a house, if Ryan's late on rent, Denise and Andrea, that's up to y'all to cover his money. So y'all don't get hurt by the landlord, so y'all don't get late fees, right? So just keep that in mind. It's a lot of responsibility financially. And that's not just with leases, it's also with utility bills. So my experiences at the ballpark apartments, like I was in a 3-bed, 3-bath, our utilities were also individual. So the utilities for the entire unit were divided by 3. And on our app, we were able to see what our third of the cost was. And I got to pay for that individually. And it didn't matter if my roommates ever got into financial trouble because it was all me. And I really liked that. And I have been, yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, so when I was in a similar setup, my sophomore year roommate dropped out. And she dropped out a month into the fall semester. And I was in a college apartment. And so I was not on the hook for finding someone to take her room. And her room ended up staying open all year. And she had to pay for that. And it didn't impact me at all. But my best friend, who lived less than a mile away on Riverside, chose to live in a non-college apartment. And he had a roommate drop out. And he and the other roommate were on the hook for that entire roommate's cost. And he got sued because he couldn't afford it, and got sued by the apartment complex for not paying that portion. And yeah, it wrecked his credit for a long time afterwards. So it was the best decision I ever made to do the college apartment. So just something to keep in mind. Even if you think you trust your friends, the college apartment route is definitely safer if you don't have the finances to cover someone else.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. It's so important to think about the consequences of what could happen, you know, when it comes to financial responsibility. Yeah, so I listed out some other differences too. You'll see that with, sorry, y'all. With college apartments, they are typically furnished units. Like when I say that, for those of y'all that aren't aware, that's like it comes with a couch and maybe a coffee table and a dinner table and all that stuff. You get all your appliances. They typically have washer and dryers in the unit. And these college apartments are typically on a UT shuttle route as well. And most of these apartments, that route, depending on traffic, it could be anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes to get to campus. And traffic's real bad, maybe 30. And then when you're looking at non-college apartments, those are typically not furnished. Utilities are usually not included, right? At least in a college apartment, you are more than likely going to get internet and cable already set up with your unit. That's kind of covered in your costs that you're already paying. Yeah. The other thing I think is a big difference is the community aspect. So when we're talking about college apartments, remember I said it's kind of like a dorm. And you know how dorms have like their own sense of community and they have their own socials and stuff. It's the same thing at these apartments. So they're typically, most of the residents are college students, and different staff will host events there as well. And I think I saw a comment in the chat about beds. Yeah, furnished also means that your entire bedroom is furnished as well. You'll even get a desk most of the times. And when you're looking at a non-college apartment, like I said, most of those residents are going to be members of the community, you know, adults, kids, families, and that thing. All right. So we've kind of been talking about a little bit about where y'all are looking. Most of y'all are saying West Campus. So I'm just going to expose y'all to some other communities as well, just to keep on your radar. And I'm going to show you a really cool resource with the off-campus living office that UT has. And they have a resource for different neighborhoods. Can y'all see this okay? Sweet. So this is the off-campus living website. They have a ton of resources. Y'all should check it out. I'm actually going to be highlighting a lot of them today. But they have this integration here with Google Maps where you can actually see the various areas in Austin where most UT students live. And you can click on one and it'll tell you a little bit of facts. I'll go ahead and start with Riverside. Riverside is down here on Riverside and Pleasant Valley. It's just south of the lake. It has a lot of names. So, but yeah, so there's different apartments down there like ballparks, estates, University Village, and other apartments. And there's apartments down over here that are not college apartments, but a lot of students stay in as well. This area is also currently being heavily gentrified, and there are some college apartments down there that are being closed, so just be mindful of that. But from what I've heard and what I've experienced, this is like one of the most affordable areas that you can live in currently when it comes to college apartment options. And that's looking at like 4x4s and 3x3s. And that's also another point to make. So it is important to think about where you're going to live and how much it's going to cost, right? But it's also important to think about how many roommates you're going to have. So I don't know if y'all know this, but the way college apartments work is it's kind of backwards from a normal apartment. You would think that with more unit space, you would be paying more, right? Because you're paying for more square footage. But when we're talking about college apartments, the more privacy you have, just like in dorms, the more you're going to pay. So if you're in a studio or a one-bedroom apartment, I guarantee you'll be paying over $1,000 because you're paying for privacy. Now, the more roommates you have, the less you're going to be paying. So it's ideal to get in a 3x3 or even a 4x4, so you're actually paying that $500 to $600 range every month. I was in a 3x3 in Riverside paying $630, $640 a month, depending on utilities. So yeah, that's a pretty neat setup. Whereas people in West Campus just rent alone are probably paying closer in the 1,000 range. And I've heard horror stories where in West Campus apartments, there are two people sharing one bedroom, each paying 1,000. So it's like you're doing the dorm all over again, right?
That is more than my 2,400 square foot house. Just so everybody's aware, like you could rent a house for the same price that they are renting a tiny 700 square foot 2-bedroom apartment. Like it's steep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so really consider the number of roommates you want. And when it comes to roommates, you don't have to have a plan in place to find friends and like try to fill those extra rooms if you're trying to do the cheapest option and get a 4x4. These college apartments operate just like dorms. They'll set you up with a roommate on their own, so you don't have to worry about that. So they'll just, you can put preferences like I want to be with all men, I want to be with all females, you know, and they'll set you up. We also have East Campus over here. I'm not familiar with any college apartments out here. These are probably homes and maybe apartments. Like I know new lofts are going up here. So these might be more non-college apartment options, unless anybody on the call is aware of any complexes that are out here.
If you click on it, it should give information, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Older non-traditional students. Okay. And then we got West Campus, which is very, very popular. So you have a lot of options over there. Do keep in mind it's a lot more expensive. The other big thing you got to worry about in West Campus is noise. There's a lot of parties out there, a lot of people getting wild. So just be cognizant of that if you're trying to really focus on your studies. We got North Campus. Again, there's not that many college apartment options up here in the Hyde Park area. It's a lot of non-college apartments, but they have pretty decent prices up here, and they got an HEB, and it's set up a little nice. I think I saw something in the chat. Construction. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of construction out in West Campus as well. And then this other community up here, we got Far West. This is for people that got good transportation, like maybe you have your own vehicle, but I also will mention that there is, Michelle, what's it called? Metro Rapid?
Yes. So there is, the farther away from campus you get, over near Far West and over all along, there's one on 183. And then even further north on 35, there are some busing and ride sharing locations. However, something to be aware of is it can take you almost an hour to get to UT through any of those routes, even though the travel time would normally only be 15 minutes. So it does add a significant amount of time to your commute to use those options. So just be aware of that.
Do those Metro Rapids still have Wi-Fi on them?
They did the last I was talking to Dr. Brown, and he took them every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I've heard of students living further out, like Round Rock, further down south, and Far West Campus, and they really like the Metro Rapids because it's fewer stops. They're just trying to get you point A to point B at a longer distance, and they sometimes have Wi-Fi on the shuttles. So that's something also to consider. And yeah, there's rideshare locations where you can drive to a lot near campus. You're able to leave your vehicle there, and then you can get on a bus route that's closer to campus and be able to get to campus. Great. And then, does anybody have any questions about these neighborhoods? Okie dokie. See if I can get back on this. Cool. All right, so here are some pictures of what the apartment could look like. These are apartments in Riverside. So these are the ballpark apartments. They're not as nice as the estates, but they're probably a little bit better than University Village. I don't know. So this is what, and this is the exact layout that I had when I was at ballpark. You got the living room, kitchen area right here, pantry, I think the washer and dryer units back here. And this is a pretty accurate depiction of what the room looks like. And it comes with the bed and the desk and all these things. And these are some more pictures of apartments, college apartments with funkier decor. And here are some floor plans. So we're showing you the 3x3 and the 4x4. You'll notice also with most college apartments, everybody gets their own bedroom and their own bathroom. But when you're talking about a non-college apartment, typically it's rare for you to find a 2x2 or a 3x3 or a 4x4. You're more likely to find a 2x1 or a 3x2. And that's more common. Okay. So different amenities, these vary depending on what type of apartment you get. Most of them have, you know, different versions of these. And here are some apartments from college apartments here in Austin. So you got a pool, gym, security. They don't all have a patrol like physically going around, but they might have somebody on call. Some are gated. Most have 24-hour maintenance, game room, covered parking. Most are close to a bus route for UT. They might have an on-site laundry facility or an actual in-unit washer and dryer, and then they have recreation courts. Now, if you have tuned out to everything I just said, now is the time to definitely tune in. And these are going to be the next couple of slides. I'd say the next 2 or 3 are super important because these are all the logistics of actually getting an apartment. Okay. So what should you be asking when you're hunting for apartments? This is a quick snapshot, and I'm about to click on it right now, of different things that you should be asking when you're looking for apartments. And this is again on that website, off-campus living for UT Austin. So I really like this worksheet because once you narrow it down to like 3 apartments that you really like, or maybe you have multiple of these sheets, you can start price comparing and, you know, comparing different amenities and whatnot. Comparing how much is the rent going to be, asking them if utilities are going to be included in your fees. What are the average utilities per month? What's that going to cost? So you have an idea of how much your total cost is going to be every month, how much the security deposit is going to be, what the options are for various bedrooms and roommates. Is there parking? If so, is there a fee? I like this one, finding out what the late fee is for rent. I didn't have that on my original list, so I'm glad I saw that. The length of the lease. So asking, is there a 6, a 9, or a 12, right? If you have options.
Now, the shorter the lease, generally, the more expensive the rent. So whenever you make those changes, it can impact price. Another thing that can impact price is whether you're on the first floor, second floor, or third floor or above. Generally, the higher up you are, the cheaper your rent, and the lower you are, the more expensive.
Thank you. Good points. Remember I mentioned earlier that you should consider subletting options. Not all apartments allow that. So it's really important for you to ask that, because if you're trying to go home for 3 months in the summer and they don't allow subletting, you need to know that, because that could be money that you're losing over the summer if you're planning to do that. How much is it going to cost if you break your lease? What happens if family stuff happens? Something happens with school, whatever the reason is, and you have to leave. What's that going to cost? What amenities do you care about?
Sorry to interrupt again. The biggest thing that hit students when COVID hit in March was the breaking the lease element of things. I'd say half the students I talked to, in their contracts, it said that you cannot break a lease and that you are responsible to cover the whole thing, even though UT shut down and allowed students to go home. So you really want to be aware, say COVID kicks up into high gear again and everything gets shut down. If you can't break your lease, you're on the hook for that entirely. One of the only good things about the dorm situation, other than being close, is that UT did refund student money when students left the dorms to move home because of COVID. So that is one big difference.
Thank you. Very important. Yeah, so not just how much to break your lease, but is it even possible? What amenities do you care about? Whether or not you're thinking of getting a pet, appliances, whether it's furnished. This says on-site laundry, but I'm highly encouraging you to ask whether or not there's a washer and dryer in unit, and not just on-site. And if they don't have it in unit, do they at least have connections, and maybe you can get your own washer and dryer and y'all can split that. Yeah, commute. I really like these too. So you can understand how long the bus ride's going to be, or if you have a car. But yeah, it's a really neat worksheet. And then the other thing, I don't know if I can get back to my tab. There it is. Okay, and now I have another important slide for you all, if you're still with me. Additional questions to ask. There's more questions. Yes, this is another really important question that a lot of students are not aware of at all. It's whether or not you are required to have a guarantor or a co-signer. Now, when I was a second year in college and I heard the word guarantor, I was like, what is that? It's a co-signer. So what that means is that some apartments require that you make 3 times the rent and that you have good credit. Now, me as an early college student, I didn't have existing credit. My parents had a horrible credit score and credit history. My grandparents weren't available to help me either, and I had to get help from an aunt or something, okay? So you need to start thinking about these things now and who could potentially be your co-signer if you don't make 3 times the rent and don't have good credit. Or existing credit, they'll hit you with that too. Asking if there's an application fee, if so, how much? This is one I wasn't aware of until I moved to Austin. It's not something I had to deal with in North Texas. Am I required to have rental insurance? And that's something that you don't do with the complex. It's something you have to set up on your own. Now, when I was at Ballpark, a friend set me up with a rental insurance that was only $5 a month. And that was really sweet. And yeah, right. Yeah, that was really sweet. I thought it was going to be like a ton of money, but it wasn't too bad. So I'm sure there are different options out there that, you know, are on the low. Is there a washer and dryer in unit? Just mentioned that. When is first month's rent due? That's also something important to consider. Some apartments will require you to pay August 1, even though you're not moving in until the end of the month. And it's really messed up. But they say they do that so that way they can keep your monthly rate at a lower cost. They've explained that to me before because I've gotten really mad. Oh, I didn't know car insurance companies offer it. What? I hope y'all made a note of Michelle's comment in the chat. She said a lot of car insurance companies offer it for $5 to $20.
Yeah, and if you have your car insurance with them, it discounts. So like it would cost a person half if they also have their car insurance with them. So good to know.
Great. Finding out if there's a down payment as well, or a security deposit. I think that was on the other sheet. This is a really important question that I thought about at the last minute, but when do their units typically fill up? Now I'm saying this especially for college apartments because they have peak times in where all of their units will fill up. And that's usually in the springtime. And it's been a minute since I've been in that cycle. So I don't quite remember what months it is where they start hitting capacity, but I think it's about April or May. And maybe even June-ish. So when you start calling around and talking to apartments, I would ask that question. So you have a good timeline of when you should start doing applications and all your research and all of that. You don't want to fall behind on that. Okay, does anybody have any questions so far? Y'all feeling good? All right. This is really important, and I'm not sure if y'all are aware of this service, but UT Legal Services will review your contract, your rental agreement with you, and they'll tell you whether or not there are any inconsistencies or anything for you to be worried about. Make sure you actually read the rental agreement. And confirm that it's the rent that you were told, confirm that it's the right length of a lease and you are getting what you were promised, and they're confirming what you're doing with utilities. So make sure you're confirming all of those things before you sign. And many of these places have you sign electronically, so it's a little more convenient. I'm going to go ahead and click on this. It is the UT Legal Services website. So the entire university has a legal services for students department that help with a variety of things. But this one is specifically knowing your rights with a landlord and through renting. So it talks about things to be concerned with the lease, your rights with breaking a lease, and all types of questions that you could be asking. Do I need renter's insurance, right? What happens if I need to make a repair to my unit? Security deposit. What happens if I get evicted? So there's a lot of important information on here, and I won't read through it all, but I just wanted to make y'all aware of that resource. Okay, do y'all have any questions about leases? Right. So based on a prior student and their experience and kind of my experience, this timeline might be a little off, depending on if any of y'all have been in the market recently actually getting an apartment. I suggest in the fall semester, that's when you do all your research and you start figuring out which apartments you're going to be zoning in on. I think in January, you should start narrowing down those few apartments you're going to be looking for, and also start searching for a roommate if you want one, or if you decide to let the college apartment handle it, then you don't have to worry about that. February or March, I would start considering to submit an application to actually get a unit. And I'm saying to do that a little early on because you might get rejected for not making enough money or for not having existing credit. And like I said, when you're doing your research in the fall semester, that's when you would ask that question. Do I need a cosigner? Do you require me to make 3 times the rent? So you're going to be asking those questions. So in February, March, submit your application, get all that squared away. In late spring, you'll probably be finalizing things, signing your lease, finalizing roommate requests and all of that. Generally with college apartments, you don't move in until the end of August. So it really depends where you are. If you're in a non-college apartment, you're actually going to be moving in more at your own time frame, and those units aren't on this type of schedule. The way a college apartment is. With those, they'll know if a unit is available. Michelle, what is it, like 30 days out, 60 days out, depending on what their policy is. Yeah, great. And resources. So like I said, I mentioned a lot today about the UT off-campus living office. A lot of students aren't aware of this website, this Facebook page. Yes, Facebook. It's called the UT Austin Sublets and Roommates Finder page. You have to request to be a part of the group, but I promise you it's an amazing group to be a part of. That's how I found my roommates when I moved to Austin, and I lived with them for 2 years, and it was really great. And you can put on there like, hey, I'm a second year at UT. This is what I'm looking for. I want to live in West Campus, whatever. And there's also options for you to do sublets. So say it's in the springtime and you're ready to give your room away for the summer, you can put postings to also see if anybody's interested in subletting your room as well. So that's a really great site. There's also West Campus Living is a good resource. For Rent University is like an apartments.com, but for university living. I saw it, it's pretty cool. And then there's also apartments.com. And there are various apps that you can check out. So there's Trulia, Zillow, apartments.com, and they can help you not just look for apartments, but also houses and rooms to rent nearby. Yeah, and that's all I got. So we'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A if y'all have any questions, and I'll stop recording.